Welcome to The Incredible Messenger, a blend of real-world stories, expert insights, and proven strategies that keep our families, communities, and cities safe and healthy. Moving beyond rhetoric and politics to practical solutions and community safety, here's your host, Jonathan McMillan.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. I don't know where you are or what time it is when you're checking out this episode, but we are back with another episode of the Incredible Messenger podcast. I am your host, Jonathan McMillan, and man, oh boy, y'all are in for a treat today because I have somebody on here as a guest who is just thoroughly respected for the subject matter expertise that he brings to communities. This is a gentleman who I heard about before I actually met him. His reputation preceded him. Just real quickly, I've been doing this work for a while now, and I have relationships with people here in Colorado. And then I have really good, deep relationships with some people here in Colorado. And one of my sisters, my mentors, my friend, Wendy Talley, she gave me a call one day and asked me if I knew this gentleman named Marcus McAllister. I was like, no, I don't know him, but what does he do? And she said, well, she's out here in Colorado, essentially building a backbone for a collective impact model for a bunch of people doing community violence intervention and gang intervention work. And she said, I brought him out here to really talk to us and educate us about what the different models look like. And he was dope. He was real dope. I was like, okay, all right. And if Wendy says that, she doesn't say that about a lot of people. She said that I knew it was the real deal. So I was really excited to get to meet him in person a couple of times at a couple of conferences that we both attended last year. And I'm telling you, this dude was like a celebrity. You would have thought that, I don't know, Jay-Z or one of those people was in the lobby, because everybody was just kind of swarming him and shaking his hand and taking pictures with him. So I got a couple of pictures with me and you, Marcus.
Yes, sir.
Look, I'm gonna quit rambling here in a second. Just a brief look at who Marcus is, and we'll have him dig into that a little bit more. He is the owner and founder of McAllister Consultancy and Training, LLC. I was going to start calling him Mr. Frequent Flyers, because as I looked at some of the work that he's been doing, he said he ended the year with about 61 to 64 flights last year. So that means that he was on tour. Going to your city. He's been involved with the University of Chicago's Crime Lab Community Intervention Program, which we'll talk about a little bit more. He's worked with, obviously, dozens of organizations. One that caught my eye, and I hope that we get to talk about it a little bit today, is Live Free. So, Marcus, I want to stop, man. I'll let you talk about yourself a little bit, man. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jonathan. I know we, as you mentioned at that conference I think it was Cities United in Atlanta. Shout out to Anthony Smith. That was a busy conference, and it was a lot going on, and it felt real good to be around a bunch of comrades. Anybody that knows me, I use that word a lot because I really stand on that. I love the comrades across the country doing this work. I've been blessed to be able to pour into a lot of them. So, that was a busy time. And so, it did seem like, I told my wife when I came back home from that conference, and I've been to a lot of conferences. Anthony knows Cities United is one of my favorites, but I've been to a lot of conferences, and sometimes I sit on panels. Sometimes, I'm doing whatever. But the Cities United, that particular conference, I wasn't set up to do a lot. So it was kind of good just to sit back and observe and come in some of the sessions. But I told my wife that I felt that in that conference that Marcus was poured into. So like people were pouring into me left and right while I was at that conference. And, I just felt good about it because it was just like, not that I asked for it or anything. I mean, my name came up on several people's speaking engagements when they were the keynote speakers for that conference and just in different things. And it was humbling, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm a God-fearing person. One thing you didn't mention that people don't know about me, I'm a pastor. So, I've been a pastor now for almost 2 years. And I'm proud of my org. certificate of ordination right there. But no, yeah, I'm a pastor. I'm a person from lived experience. Served almost 10 years incarceration.
Mm.
And, I'm an individual that when he came home from incarceration and decided to relocate, I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. That's where I was born. I was
Okay.
actually, I was born on the West Coast, raised on the West Coast, but I would always come back to Chicagoland. My grandfather's a pastor. And when I was getting released from jail, I knew I wanted to come back here because I knew he was up in age, and
Mm-hmm.
he would come see me a lot at all the institutions I was at. So I just felt I wanted to be around my grandfather. And then I got the opportunity to come home. He stays in the northern suburbs of Chicago. That's where I'm located now. And I got a chance to take care of him, spend time with him before he passed away, maybe a year after I was released. And so since then, I've been here in this community. I've been in the Chicagoland area, I mean. And, I'm a married man. I've been married going on 23 years. This year makes 23 years for me. I have a couple children. I have a 20-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old son. My daughter's
Oh,
in her second year of college out in Cal State Northridge, out there in LA, because my kids love California. I mean, it's in my blood now. I'm always be West Coast California person. You can believe that. But I definitely love Chicago as well, because Chicago is where I really got into the CVI space. It's where I learned it. It's where I got introduced to it, and it's where I ran with it. And here I am 20 years later, 21 years later in the space. Somebody told me the other day, I mean, I would say I'm somewhat of a historian when it comes to CVI. I mean, I can go back
yeah.
and tell you about, you just pick a topic, a person, place, an organization. More than likely, I'm going to know something about it because I've been around the space for so long promoting this work.
That all of that is awesome, man. And I'm envisioning a lot of conversations outside of this podcast because we have some shared experiences and shared background.
Hmm.
I may edit this out or I may not, but I when you talked about being incarcerated and your grandfather coming to visit you. So I also had that experience, right? When I was incarcerated here in Colorado, the one person who I could count on for a usually a weekly visit,
Right.
if it wasn't weekly, it was a couple times a month, was my grandfather. And man, I'm getting a little teary eyed thinking about it right now. The last time that so he would bring my daughter and her mother to come visit me all the time, right? So he
Hmm.
made sure that I had those connections. And the last time that he came up to visit me, the prison was on lockdown, and so there was no movement. And he sat there in the lobby for several hours. And of course, you already know the prisons aren't close. So, this man was driving 2.5 hours both ways to
Mm.
come see me. And he sat there and sat there in the lobby waiting, or in the visitor, space to come visit me. And they kept telling him, "Oh, well, it'll be just a few more minutes." And eventually he got tired, and he couldn't wait any longer. So he drove home, and then he got really sick, and he wasn't able to make the trip anymore. And about a year later, give or take, I saw the parole board, and they paroled me. But you know how it is. It's not like they say you're paroled and they let you out the next day. I had to wait
Right.
probably another 2 or 3 months. But when I got notified that I got paroled, I ran back to the dorm and picked up the phone to call. And my my daughter's mom answered the phone, and she's like, "Oh, we are going to just try to reach out to you." And I'm like, "Yeah, I got paroled." And they're like, "Granddad passed this morning." And I truly believe that he held on until he knew that his baby boy was going to be all right, and that he was
Mm.
at peace, and was able to go on home. So
Yes,
uh
sir.
yeah, so I'm glad we started off this conversation with some
Yeah.
real talk, brother.
No, no doubt about it. That's all I do. We're gonna keep it 100% real. No stiffness.
Yeah.
Just have a good conversation, and obviously, family means a lot to me. So of course, yeah. I'm glad you. Thank you for sharing your story about your grandfather as well.
So man, you talked a little bit about your background and how deeply involved, and I love the fact that you say you're a historian, and have been educating yourself about this work. But I want to
Mhm.
ask a question about like what inspired you to get on this journey, right? Obviously, your personal background had somewhat to do with it, but I mean, there's millions of people who have backgrounds like us and don't get involved in the work.
Right.
So, what inspired you?
Well, I think like me being in this work was divine intervention. God was trying to save my life. I know it. I know He was. It wasn't even a
Uh
think
huh.
that I had no desire to do this work. Didn't know nothing about it. Never saw myself doing any social work. Never saw, because part of this is like social work and you're dealing
Oh
with
yeah.
people, and obviously, right? So, the way wound up in this work, when I came home from prison, I was on a destiny to. I had a national magazine. I had a national magazine, and I started my magazine, and I had these intention of being a publisher back when magazines were in. I started out with
Hmm.
magazines like the Feds magazine, Don Diva, Double XL,
Hmm. Hmm.
just to name a few. Those were my peers. And when I came home, I learned a little bit about the magazine industry. I traveled a lot. I did a lot of interviews, and so I was in this vein of sat down with Suge and Akon, and the list goes on. I've been around many of people in this celebrity thing when I was trying to do my magazine, Pastor Troy and rappers and also entrepreneurs, because my magazine was called Exposure Magazine, and
Okay.
it was really based off of entrepreneurship, but it got a heavy influence with the entertainment industry. But it wasn't like a rap magazine or anything. It really was about entrepreneurship, because my uncle has and I'm going somewhere with this story. My uncle has a magazine in the northern suburb of Chicago called the What's Happening. And the What's Happening is all the black businesses, all the Latino businesses, a lot of them. And these are like their businesses, their stories, highlights of different people doing good things. And I always was a fan of my uncle's magazine, but I was even a more fan of Black Enterprise magazine. I used to read Black Enterprise magazine
Hmm.
when I was incarcerated quite a bit. And Earl Graves is somebody that I looked up to. I liked his business mind and everything he stood for. And I remember reading a book called How to Succeed in Business Without Being White by Earl Graves. And the title will
Yes.
throw you off, but the material in the book was really about just business and financial literacy, and it was trying to teach black people about stocks back then. And this is me. I read this probably like in 1992. I got
Hmm.
locked up in 91. And so when I came home, I did the magazine and stuff, but I did something I said I would never do again, which was jump back down into anything in the streets. And the only reason I did, because I wanted my magazine to succeed so bad that I was willing to take chances to be able
Mm.
to sustain it, to be able to keep it going, whatever it took, I was going to do that. And during that process, I almost got myself reincarcerated. Something I said I would never do, go back to jail. I got locked up when I was 18, and I came home right when I was 27, going on my 28th birthday. And I almost found myself getting reincarcerated. And then one day, a lady locally in my community came up to me. She came inside a business. That's why I say this divine intervention. Let me just explain this part. My family has a sign company called McAllister Sign Company. And
Okay.
when I decided to leave the streets alone, and I was about to get a magazine a break, because the entertainment industry, I mean, it was street itself, and I was trying to get away from a lot of stuff, right? So I gave it
Hmm.
all a break, and I kind of took a hiatus. And I went up to my family business and started painting signs. It was something I never really liked to do, but I did. And while I was at the company that has our name, it has my last name on the building, a lady came into the McAllister sign shop and asked me, while I was doing work in a building that has my name on it, asked me, was I looking for a job? Now, what made her ask me, was I looking for a job in a building that got my name on it? She knew I was a McAllister. So it's not like she didn't know my last name and know that this was my
Right.
family, but maybe something she thought about, that what she was asking me was something she figured I could do. I don't know. That's why I say, so she asked me, was I interested in applying for this new program that was launching in Chicago called Ceasefire, the Chicago
Right.
version, not the Boston David Kennedy version. I'm talking about the Chicago version, and totally different. If we have time, we can talk about that. But nevertheless, I'm just answering your question. And so she asked me, was I interested? I asked her what it was. She told me a little bit about it. I told her out the gate, I'm not no neighborhood watch. I'm not the
Yeah.
guardian angels. I'm not doing
Yeah.
no police stuff, none of that. So she said, no, come give it a shot. Come see what it's about. It's not what you think it is. And I went to a meeting and I sat like in a room on a hiring panel where I guess you'd call it a hiring panel. It was really an informational session, but it was just me by myself and about 5 people on the panel. One of them being a gentleman by the name of T.O. Hardiman out of
Yep.
Chicago. And T.O. was on that panel. And they asked me a few questions about things. And that's why I prefaced with the magazine before I got into this work, because when I was doing my magazine, I was interviewing and doing stories on all local people. And some of them were rappers, some were business owners, and some of them were ballers and dope dealers and people getting money, because I
Yep.
believe that if I could promote their business, maybe they can go on and do that full time and not be caught up in the web of what, the system tries to get us when we out there grinding. I know, I've
Right.
been there. So that is, so I knew a lot of people. So when they said, this is what it's about, and, you use your influence to do it, I went to the first meeting. I think I fell in love with it because when I looked around the room, I saw many people that I recognized from different institutions, from the streets. And I said, oh, this is a real thing. If all these people are
Right.
around the
Right.
table, it's definitely not no police thing. And so that's kind of how I got into the work. That's the quick little how it first kicked off for me.
I appreciate all of that backstory, and the fact that you even view that as divine intervention it's all of that. Spoke to a couple of things, and ceasefire and the Boston ceasefire, Chicago ceasefire, the different models. It goes into, there are different models out here, right?
Yeah.
And there's different ways to approach, in general, gun violence prevention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even here in Colorado, with the work that I'm involved in right now, I'm starting to shift away from language saying gun violence. I'm saying firearm related harm, because when we look at it as a public health crisis, and using a public health approach to it, is really about the harm that happens to the individuals, to the families, to the communities, all of that. I think you are the perfect person to help our listeners understand what is the difference between violence prevention, violence interruption, violence intervention, and even maybe talk about some of the different models that maybe use one of those specifically or incorporate the spectrum.
Sure. Just pick one of those you want me to start off at. I mean,
Yeah.
I like all those questions.
Yeah. Can you explain what the difference is about prevention and intervention? And then we'll move into interruption.
Sure. So, like, my prevention to me is something that is a little more broader. More people
Mm-hmm.
potentially can do it, and it's long term. Whereas intervention, everybody can't do it. It's not as broad as prevention. It's a newer terminology to most folks because you hear prevention, you want to prevent some people understand that, but when you start saying we're intervening or intervention or violence intervention or violence interrupt, that is kind of fairly new to a lot of people, even though it's been around for a
Mm-hmm.
while. We've been doing it. And so, like, one person said, well, like, intervention is like where the rubber meets the road. I mean, you are getting in
Mm-hmm.
people's business, you're intervening in conflict, you're intervening in situations. Where prevention, I may work with some folks that I want long term. Like, so I look at like hospital,
Mm-hmm.
school, after school programs, mentorships. I mean, I'm not going to put names on all the different things, but
Yeah.
these are
Yeah.
all preventative type work, which I think is great. We don't have enough intervention programs. Like, that's why that's why, you think about it, CVI is community based violence intervention. I know the feds, the DOJ added on there the P and the I, but when people say it, they say CVI because it's obviously it's a whole ecosystem, community violence
Mm-hmm.
intervention, or if you put the base in there, I like how they got the silent base that people don't say sometimes, is community based violence intervention. But Everyone, I'm glad you asked that, because there's a lot of people that were saying they were doing intervention, and is is not just intervention is working with the highest risk. You're dealing with stuff that's going on right now. It's conflict, and you're intervening and trying to stop things, and everybody's not doing that. Even though funding came out, and all of a sudden everybody's calling everything intervention. Most of the stuff they're describing is prevention, and it's dealing with little Jimmy who just might, you know, he's starting to go down the wrong path. So you want to prevent him from becoming, the next person that's high risk. And so that's an easy way to describe the difference. And there is the long-term and short intervention. We're dealing with it right now. We don't got time to be thinking about all these other things. Like when somebody gets shot, they come in the hospital, the doctor got to deal with it right now. He's not worried about, he can't be concerned or be derailed by all the different things that might have led to that, because he got to patch that person up. And that's like what a lot of intervention does. It's dealing with the process of right now.
I love that analogy of the immediate and the right now of a situation, especially when we talk about looking at this issue as a public health crisis. Like that's a great analogy of someone coming into an emergency room, whether they've been shot, stabbed, hit by a car, or whatever. The intervention is applied to that situation to prevent it from getting worse, right?
Right.
Whereas prevention is going to your doctor on a regular basis to get your annual checkup, to get, if you got a sore knee, going for x-rays and figuring out what that is, right? So I love that analogy. The other piece to that question, though, is the difference between intervention and interruption, because I've noticed over the last couple of years people use those words interchangeably, and from experience I know that interruption is a whole different, more nuanced skill set than the intervention work. Got
But
that a little
yeah,
bit?
what interruption just falls underneath it just falls underneath a form of intervention, right? It's a piece of the intervention work. It's just that interruption is like attached to mediations and trying to de-escalation, and
Right.
and so it's not too far off. So I don't mind it being interchangeable to some degree, because it's, now if you want to get more specific, then yeah, you talk about what is street interruption, what is violence mediators doing, and or violence interrupters, and when they're doing mediations, and then you get to more of the Pacific, but it still falls underneath the umbrella of intervention type work, because in order to interrupt, you got to intervene. You know what I'm saying? So they are one and the same. It's just that you can get deeper with the words of interruption, like how do you interrupt this situation? And obviously it's about credibility, relationships, having the ability to talk to each side, or one side, or somebody from your team can go talk to another side and stop those parties from going at each other, or whatever the case may be. So they're very similar, but just with some slight nuances that a person could dive into. But I don't think it's too far off, like, because people just mix it up, as you say. Remember, this is new, Jonathan. There's so many people, they call everything, and they might say, hey, we want the violence interrupter program, or we want the intervention program, or we want the street outreach program. They're saying the same thing. They're saying they want boots on the ground. They want the boots on the ground and people that are out there doing their best to slow down people having grievances against one another. They just say whatever comes to their mind or what's real popular. I mean, like when the Interrupters documentary came out, it really put ceasefire on the map. And when that documentary came out, a lot of people said, okay, this is what ceasefire does. They have what they call violence interrupters. And, it became a big thing, and it exploded in the country when all the film festivals and all the speaking and things that we did, and all the subject matter experts that were in that film and whatnot. And I was a part of that time when that was going on. I wasn't filmed in the movie, but I was part of the process when all that was going on. I was right there training, flying the cities, doing the same thing I've been doing now. And so that put the word interrupters out there, because the movie was called The Interrupters, right? And so it just really stamped it throughout the country, even bigger than what it was before that. And with that, people might take it and not have all the clear understanding of what that is.
Right. And that's exactly some of the, I guess I'll use the word challenges I've experienced here locally in Colorado is we have decision makers, policymakers, politicians who say they want youth violence prevention, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really what they mean is violence intervention, violence interruption, and what gets lost in the language, right, is you have people who are literally writing RFPs and RFAs for prevention programs,
Yeah.
for the young people who aren't necessarily that high risk. They may be exposed to a lot of risk factors, right? They may be exposed to poverty. They may
Right.
have family settings and environments where violence is normalized, just all of the different risk factors that may exist in this young person's life. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily make them high risk for being
Yeah.
involved or impacted by violence because
Facts.
they're
That's
they're
right.
on the right track, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nothing against that after school program that's doing basketball or culinary or financial literacy.
Or whatever it
All
is.
of
Yeah.
that's needed. But when the politicians and the policymakers are saying we want a violence prevention program, and really what they mean is they want somebody boots on the ground who are working with the shooters, who are working with these young people who have firearms, and ones who aren't going and will probably never go to the after school program, right?
Right.
Because
Exactly.
that's not their bag. So
That's not their
thank you for
bag.
breaking that down.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I agree with what you just said too. That's good stuff.
Hey, so you touched on this a bit, and I think this is still in line with the conversation we're having.
Mm-hmm.
There's recently over the last couple of years been an injection of funding into CVI programs, right, or into the world of prevention and intervention and eruption under the blanket of CVI programs. Do you see this as a long term shift in priorities from whether it's municipal, county, state, or federal government? Do you think that this is going to sustain and really be a long term shift?
I mean, I would hope so, but only time will tell. I mean, I would hope so, but excuse me, but you never know with administrations. And I mean, I think about it when you said the money. So, like myself, Dr. Chico Tillman, and my sister Stephanie Reed, we went around the country doing Fun Peace Tour. And part of that was educating people about the ARPA dollars and how they could use the ARPA dollars for violence prevention, or how the president even wanted them to use a portion of it for that. I mean, it was some unrestricted money that they weren't expecting to get, $1 trillion package, et cetera, et cetera. So when we first started out on our Fun Peace initiative, going around and working with Ambassador Rice and different folks at the White House was aware of our travels and different colleagues and stuff. We all worked together with the Black and Brown Peace Consortium to really kick this off. And while we were traveling, there was no money allocated at the beginning. By the time we got done, we did like 19, 20 something cities in 3 months. So we was every week we were on a plane. Sometimes we were on a plane twice in a week because we went to multiple cities. And it was a 3 month thing, and we did like 20 something cities. And so while we were doing that, by the end of it, it was zero at the beginning. At the end of it, it was about 2 point something billion that were allocated. So why do I bring that up? Is because we would go to cities in various parts, whether it was the West Coast or we'd be down south. And, you just got people in these city governments and different places that, it was like pulling teeth to get them to say, hey, why don't you apply some of this to CVI? Matter of fact, here's an addendum that the president is trying to break it down to you that you can use this for this. So all the money is not just for your potholes or your deficit or all the stuff that you just, oh, we got this money, let's do it. COVID affected violence. So let's take some of that funding. That's what it was, right? It was the CARES Act. This was for things that COVID affected. It's like they didn't realize that COVID had affected violence in the Black and Latino communities. And so that's my point. So I would hope it would be forever, but I don't trust the establishments. I don't trust the politicians. I don't trust that they won't shift at one point. But here's the thing. I mean, if you don't go into it thinking that there's going to be forever, you'll always be innovative in your mind, and you'll always figure out how we can
Mhm.
do our best to do. Before there was Fun Peace, before there was all this CVI talk, before people were even in this space, we were galvanizing, pushing in city by city, small municipality, big municipality, and we were just saying, hey, you need to do this. Here's some stats on it. You need to put some money into street intervention and put these teams on the ground. And so we had been doing that. Like, I've been doing Fun Peace for a long, long time before we had that terminology. And I will continue to do it. And I hope that others will continue to do it, whether this stuff gets stamped and it stays in the mix forever. Because if it doesn't, you just got to keep fighting. You mentioned Live Free earlier, who I have a lot of respect
Yes.
for. I have a lot of respect for Live Free. You know, Pastor Mike and Dr. Antonio, individuals that I respect. But what I really respect is that, you know, they organize. Live Free is they do organizing, and you got and I realized I learned all this, you know, in time. Like, I learned different pieces, because there was a time, Jonathan, I just had my head down. If you weren't doing street intervention, if you weren't doing Cure Violence or Ceasefire, the groups that I kind of helped build up and was working for, then I didn't know nothing about the other stuff. I didn't know nothing about this ecosystem, because we were just getting to it. And so we were good at what we were doing too. That's why we were getting replicated and we were growing prior to anything at the federal level and all this that's going on, because the work was, we were putting the work in, and we were getting it done. And so I think that, I hope it stays in the mix. I hope that we continue to advocate, as I mentioned, like with community justice. And I think about, you mentioned Office of Gun Violence Prevention at the White House, our good brother Greg Jackson and Rob Wilcox and the sister Stephanie. I'm excited about that office. Now we hope it stays, because with a new
Right.
administration, you know, they could tear that office apart. But whether they do or not, it doesn't stop what we're trying to do. We got to keep pushing. We got to keep serving our neighborhoods. We got to organize locally. It's almost like they say, people put all this emphasis on voting nationally and president. You need to be worried about what's going on in your backyard, so you can change the spectrum. Who are you electing in your local elections, in
Right.
your local city, and because they have money, they like this, you know, there's money there locally to put into these spaces to do this work. So we can't just depend on this to be something that the federal government backs forever, which I don't, you know, see them doing forever. It should be just like you got police and firefighters and all that. You should have community violence intervention. It should be a regular part of community safety, public safety, because they're needed. You're not going to say, "Oh, violence is down, fire all the police or pull their funding," or, you know, ain't a lot of people went to the hospital, so we don't need these doctors no more. But what happens in CVI is that we'll get the job done and do good, and then they'll be like, "Oh, okay, they got the violence down, and they don't need funding next year." We're fighting every year from funding. We need to be a line item and just a regular part of any municipality, as you have these different groups, and we are street interventionists, community violence intervention workers, hospital-based prevention workers.
Man, it's almost as if you're reading my mind, because you touched on a lot of points, and you answered my question thoroughly. Like, my hope also is that people are going to get that message, especially that last part. This isn't the penicillin. This isn't an antibiotic, right? You can't just get a shot and then think that it's done with. There needs to
Right.
be a paradigm shift,
Mm-hmm.
and a realization that this needs to be sustained if it's a priority. Couple of questions. One is, where do you see the field? Let's assume
Mm-hmm.
that people get the message. Let's assume that the budget monitors or whoever it is, they get
Sure.
the message, and they continue to invest in peace. And continue to invest in the field of community violence intervention and community health workers and the outreach workers. Where do you see the field in, say, like 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, I see the field growing. I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see funding get to the ground and new practitioners finding their way into this space. So yeah, I could just see it continually growing and just be like a way of life for a lot of people to start to understand what this is. That is what I fell in love with about the work. I'm like a broken record with this. So anybody that really knows me and those that's listening to this recording, they probably heard me say this before. is that I believe in a lot that this work does. It changes first the staff. So their lives are being
Mhm.
changed first, and then they go out and save lives and change lives. And so that's exciting for me to see like the transformation. And I'm very fortunate because I get a chance to go to these cities or meet these groups that are just getting started. I see that zeal and energy that they have, and they're excited to be doing this. And they're all cut from the same cloth as a lot of us been cut from. So, but that piece of it has never been evaluated. It's really not the thing, like I, if there was a union, I am the union president for street intervention. That's a fact. I speak for them. I push for them. I know that they are such an important ingredient, and it saved my life. Now, I love that we save lives and we're getting out here and we're changing, stopping the mediation. That's cool. That's a blessing. That's blessed are the peacemakers. But the fact that I see that it changed the lives of myself and others that could have been doing something else, but then you find yourself doing this and you fall in love with it and it becomes a career. And in my case, I started my own company, and things have been going up from ever since I've been involved in this space. So I feel good about it. The only part that I want to see happen more of is the upward mobility part, which I'm working on right now.
Right, right.
I'm working on my own MC&T Train the Trainers Academy that we're launching this year with a select bunch of individuals that are going to be helping out because we need more trainers and TTA, and we need physical bodies that are able to go help these cities. I can't keep going everywhere. So if everything goes right for me in 5 years, there will be more people doing what I'm doing now, as well as a bunch of new people coming in just getting to the work. Because I was having this conversation with my sister Queen Erica Ford yesterday, and we were talking about like a lot of the transition from a lot of the people that's in the space now, the OGs, if you want to call them, the people that's been doing this a while. They have to be able to tell their story, and they have to have this upward mobility, and they need to learn more about the space other than just being in your city doing the work you've been doing for 20, 30 years, and you never get a chance to share that knowledge with others. I plan in the next 5 years or whatever we say as this thing grows to make sure that part is taken care of, because I feel like it has not been, with all the influx of money and funding, and we're looking at sites and we're looking at individuals like robots. What about helping them to know the work better, sustain the work, because they need, you mentioned I was in Denver. Shout out to Wendy, and I appreciate Wendy and them for coming out there. Next week, we've got the DOJ conference coming up or whatever,
Mhm.
coming to Chicago soon. And, you know, I think it's great. We fought for that money. So it's not like we fought for that. You know what I'm saying? I was at the White House when they had the signing of that Community Safety Act. A lot of people did a lot. They wrote a lot of stuff, the Black and Brown Peace Consortium, and many others that I may not mention. But at the end of the day, if we want to sustain it, we have to do a better job on making sure people know what they're doing, give them the right resources, give them the right training, help them to elevate. And the only way we're going to do that, we got to build up the field of trained TTA practitioners. And I'm going to take that on for myself, even if I got to fund it out of my pocket. Shout out to Live Free, who is working with me on that. So Live Free, myself. So I am, Live Free is one of the people that I are partners. I work with them, Pastor Mike and them. I have few people because I'm my own company, but I partner with a lot of people. Live Free being one of my favorites. And so with Live Free, being that I'm on their team, we started to launch TTA and training. And we have 3 cities we're doing that in right now: St. Louis, Montgomery, Alabama, and Oklahoma. Those are 3 Live Free TTA training cities that Live Free is providing a TTA, they're training the site, getting them up the ground, and obviously I'm the one doing that lift. But where I say shout out to Live Free, because they've allowed me to be able, I'm starting to do some of my train the trainers within those 3 cities because I'm bringing people with me. People are going to
Mhm.
shadow with me. They're going to learn. And so that way more people can do it. Myself and Dr. Chico. Dr. Chico's down with me on everything I do, and likewise me with him. And then shout out to Everytown. I got to give Mike Spence, another person that I rock with, and Everytown is sponsoring my Train the Trainers initiative. So I'm getting some little sponsorship, and I don't say little in a way of like, oh, because it all adds up, but it's a start. I'm about to start helping practitioners that want to train, that want to do TTA, that want to learn what it is to go to a city and do an assessment. I plan to help them get there by starting my little miniature academy where I teach, I train, and then send them out, because I don't want to have to keep going. I want to turn 64 flights into 32 at least, and let the other 32 be other people going to do it based off a name that I've built over time by being thorough in what I do and not being somebody that cut corners. I mean, I pride myself on working hard when it comes to CVI.
Man, all of that is great, and as we talk about the upward mobility
Mm-hmm.
as a career path for whether they're the outreach workers, they're the administrators, or the directors
Directors
of
or program man, whatever. Right.
all
Exactly.
of that.
All of that.
My vision here in Colorado is to start to expand on a federally recognized work classification of a community health worker to begin to professionalize the field and recognize that what people are doing is literally community health. So the person who is like you and me 20 years ago and says, I want to get into the field.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you would recommend where they start? And it doesn't have to necessarily be an organization. Like, what are some of the, say, soft skills and even key skills and understanding that someone has to have in order to
Sure.
move into this field?
So my sister in Detroit, who I got a lot of love for, Aaliyah Harvey Quinn, runs Force Detroit. They're doing great work out there. Shout out to my man Zoe and the team. And just Detroit, period. Ray Winans, all the good people out there doing good work. Reason I bring her up, because I saw her on a reel on Instagram, or it might even be LinkedIn, one of them. And she used a word that I love. I talk about it all the time, and it goes to the answer of your question. Out the gate, you got to analyze: are you a person that has empathy? You gotta, before you get in anything, community work, trying to help people, you gotta really analyze yourself. Are you an empathetic person? And you know the answer yourself because only you know. Or you may think you're empathetic, but then the true you comes out and you are looking down on situation, you judging people. So my advice to anybody, first find out if you got empathetic spirit in you. Because if you don't, it's gonna be a tough climb in this space. Are there people that get in that are not so empathetic and that slide into this space and they didn't went to college or whatever and they think that that they know this or know that, but they don't have empathy, then they don't really last long and they can get swallowed fast in the context of this work. So that would be one thing. And it doesn't matter what group you go to or whatever. Analyze yourself. See if you have empathy in the space of community work, especially dealing with violence. Because listen, it's easy to judge. It's easy to judge when somebody shoots somebody and the bullet misses and it kills a 13-year-old kid or something. It's easy to judge when somebody gets down on two or three people and your staff got to go work with the alleged shooter. It's got to work with him and his
Yeah.
friends and stuff. So if you come to this, no matter what your level is of it, you can find yourself getting lost. I would also say learn as much as you can about the work. Like you can't, you have to learn and keep learning. Some people think that this is something that you just know or I can do this, but you ain't did no study, you ain't learned, you don't know terminology, you don't learn the atmosphere of the work. You got to know it because you got to be able to share what you've learned when you start dealing with people. So I guess
Right.
the part of that, what I would say, take it slow. People see me now and I went through some rocky roads. I was let go from a company that I faithfully helped out for 17, 18 years, and they did some real treacherous type of things. But God had a plan for me, and I bounced back. But I had a trajectory. I've been in this 20 years, I told you, but it wasn't always a smooth ride. I've been
Mm-hmm.
laid off. I've
Mm-hmm.
been waiting for funding. You got to stay the course. So if you're going to come in it, you got to say, you know what, this is for me. I knew this work was for me. My wife would be like, hey, I know y'all got laid off. You going to get a job or whatever. And I'd be like, nah, I'm going to take this unemployment and I'm going to wait for the funding to come back into play here in Illinois. And I'm going to get back into the work that way. So you got to have patience. You got to have empathy. You know, if you are going to go to whatever organization, do your homework on people. Make sure that they are received heavily in the community by the
Mm-hmm.
folks, because that's going to make the difference of how smooth the transition is. You may just be going to do a job, but you don't know that the organization is highly not liked in that city or that neighborhood just because they're the ones that receive the funding. So those are things I would tell people if I was to go back 20 years and they were in this. And also, I'll tell you another thing, last thing, because I would say you have to come in this with even though I said to you that I was tunnel vision, I don't
Hmm.
mind being tunnel vision because it allowed me not to be distracted by every ism. A friend of mine said one time, the house is on fire. You go and you take the hose, you put in the fire out. I don't have time to figure out who the slumlord was, the landlord. There's other people that could do that. There's your Live Frees of the world. There's your organizers, or the mama's traumatized. Well, then you got my sister Arisa, who has not another child, and the survivor services, and all those are great. But when you're going to get into whatever you're going to get into, put your head down on that and learn it. But just don't be like me where you don't never look up and realize that there's an ecosystem that you need to be connecting to. Because the days of doing this work and only just doing one piece of it is played out. So like when I go to cities and I'm training people and teaching them and showing them this work, I say, listen, we going for the whole caboodle. We need everything. We need the school program, housing programs. We need street intervention. Now, I will say that there's a core. I don't bite my tongue about this. In CVI, the core is going to have to be boots on the ground. Bottom line, it's the core. You got to have boots on the ground that are doing the
Right.
intervention part of CVI. Then you can add all the other pieces that need to be in there, and they need to come immediately as well. And that's why we ask for more funding now. But there was a time when all we wanted was enough funding to put 12 or 13 people per target area in the neighborhood,
Hmm.
train them, and they do what they do. And we were saying we're not a service provider. Now we go to politicians and stuff or whatever funders. We say, listen, we need at least $1 million because we want to have wraparound services. We want to have, survivor people. They need their piece of the pie so they can help out things that we can't do. But once again, the core, and people can disagree with this all they want and they don't have to agree with me. The core, if you want to get violence down, you're going to have some boots on the ground intervening with the population that don't care nothing about all them other resources, even though we say that, people need jobs. Some of these guys, they out there eating off the land, so they don't need a job.
Right.
They need a mentor, somebody to holler at them to say, listen, I know you're getting money out here, big bro, but can you help me dissolve these situations? Because you can't make no money if bodies is dropping. That's why I always say, Jonathan, this is not the stop the why you do this movement, why you sagging, why you curse, why you selling drugs, why do you smoke, why do you drink, all the moral things that we know in due time can change. You got to know what your position is. And we knew out the gate, we're just here to stop back and forth shooting. We're not even trying to disarm people of their weapons. We're just trying to slow down the senseless shooting back and forth of taking a life, and all that other stuff will happen organically. So when I came into this, I knew as a Christian, I wasn't going out there preaching to everybody, even though I believe that the number one mediator is Christ, that he mediated my life and changed my life, right? But I didn't go out there and try to, do that. I stayed to what I knew. And I said, if they open up that door and say they want to come in, then I'll bring them in. I know I kind of got off topic there a little bit, and you'll see me have my moments because I'm passionate about this. And I love to see this work go. And so I may, go here and there time to time, but that would be some stuff that I would tell people.
No, you're right on point, and you're still on target because the people with the boots on the ground was really at the core of my last two questions. If you want to enter into this work, you understand that there's levels of this, there's layers to it, however you want to phrase it, and there's a lot of different skill sets. There's a lot of different ways to go about the work, and there's a lot of different lanes that you can find yourself in, and understand that this is ecosystem. The ecosystem's complex. You can find your
Yes.
lane in any one of those parts of the
You
ecosystem,
sure can. Yes, you can. And know
and
that, as I said
contribute.
at the conference, all the pie, you should know this going into this. The pie is not going to be cut equally. It shouldn't be cut equally. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you got
Yeah.
to know that if there's a group, if I'm doing some work in a city and there's a group that's on the ground trying to deal with shorty bang banging them in the neighborhood, they may need 12 staff in the office and all that. So, yeah, they may need X amount of dollars. You may need X amount of dollars, but you can't say, well, how come I don't got the same they got? Well, all you need is 4 people for your whatever program. And so that's why I'm not going to say nobody's particular program, because they'll be like, I'm picking on them. But I'm saying you might not need as much. And so you got to come to the table in community and know what everybody does. And let's be realistic about, well, we know you need funding, but it's not all like cut. Okay, here's your pie slice, here's your pie slice, and it's going to be different. But people got to believe that. If they don't believe that, they're always going to go in with a worrying about the next person and why they got that, and how come we don't have this, and you can't get nothing done that way if all you're going to do is just be like in people's pockets and comparing, what they got and what you didn't get.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because the pocket watching that kills me, man, and the divisiveness when
Right.
again it's all the community.
That's right.
Man, this conversation has been wonderful. I truly want to, and I hope that you're enjoying it as much as I am. I
Yes.
want to do a second part and continue to
100%.
elevate all of these insights because I think this is going to be so valuable to the field. In the field, whether it's that person who's just getting their foot in the door and trying to figure out their way, or to
Yeah.
the city leader who's saying, "Oh, okay, this is how that program may apply to my city." So, or this model, or the work of CVI can apply to my city.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a couple more questions before
Sure.
we wrap up. And look, I'm going to shift a little bit to get to know Marcus a little better. I want people to recognize themselves in you and say, like, you don't have to have a cape. The tagline to the show is not all heroes wear capes. You can get into this work and be a quote unquote regular person.
That's
So
right.
I'm gonna shift over here to let's see here. Oh, give me a second, Mark.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I was thinking while you were shifting, I was just wanted to give a shout out, as you mentioned earlier, to the CVILA Academy at the University of Chicago, which I'm so excited about and humbled and honored that I am the Dean of Students for this process. And it's only fitting because I know so many comrades. I love the comrades. I push for the comrades. And I would dare to say that, and it's not even, I would dare to say, I don't know if there's anybody that knows more people on the ground doing CVI than me. Like if we just do a clarion call and let's find out how many people we know that's touched the ground. And I say that to say that that's why I'm glad that I can help out with this University of Chicago CVI LA Academy, because I know a lot of people. I can relate to a lot of people. I've been to their cities, not just through webinars and stuff. I've been there, as you said. And even though I mentioned 64 flights last year before that it was 55, the year before that it was 50, and then probably 8 years prior to that it was an average of 40 at least. So it's always been a lot for me, for going and going and going from New York to Baltimore to Philly to Oakland, to New Orleans, who I'm about to work out there. Shout out to New Orleans. We're about to launch the New Orleans program, myself and my team and Dr. Tillman and stuff, because we do implementation all over the country. So of course, I want people to know that. I mean, I'm busy with that. I'm too busy with it. I was just in Newport News, Virginia, visiting my people from the Victor program. Shout out to them. I'll be in St. Louis. Show me peace. Shout out to Will Pink, the OVP, and Mission St. Louis, who's doing the work there. Those are my folks. I got love for them, and I look forward. Shout out T-Dub to get out there and do some work in St. Louis. I'm going to Kalamazoo, Michigan, real soon, and we're launching a team in Kalamazoo to get them more equipped and stuff in the work. So the work never stops. I was just in Madison, Wisconsin, out there with my brother Anthony Cooper. Shout out to Anthony. So I just know people. I love people. It's the side of me that God has blessed me with to kind of gravitate to folks, and they gravitate to me, man.
Look, dude, you're going to find this humorous.
Mm-hmm.
My next question literally was, who is an unsung hero doing this work? And then as I'm looking for the question, you're answering it. So
yeah, there's so many of them, man. You're right.
yeah.
And I worked in Africa. People I know I launched 2 CVI sites in Africa. Also Trinidad. Also went to Belize a couple times, and I want to get back to working with the country of Belize. I've been all over. I even worked in Canada, Nova Scotia, and different places like that throughout my career and my years. And there's nothing new underneath the sun, Jonathan. The same stuff applies. That's why no one can tell me that street outreach, or whatever you want to call it, street intervention, street outreach, it's all encompassing, that this doesn't work. I know it works. I've been a part of the evaluation. I saw the transformation, even in South Africa, where South Africa and Trinidad are way more. They're much rougher than any city we can imagine in the United States. But yet
Hmm.
they succeeded because they took to the training, they hired the right people, and they listened and they did things correctly. And that's what it boils down to. No matter where you're at, you name a city, if they do it right, they can show success. But go ahead. I'm sorry though.
No, man, don't apologize because I mean, you're spot on. I'll add this part to what you were just saying. Over the course of time that I was involved in the work,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm still very, very much involved. Part of my evolution, and this goes back to what you said, the upward mobility, right?
Yes.
I say this very humbly,
Hmm.
and I say this hopefully to inspire people who are listening to this and saying, I want to get involved in the work, and I don't know what the career path is. Man, I was a gangbanger back in 1992, right? And you move to 2022, I was the director of an office of gun violence prevention at a state level in the same state that incarcerated me. Right. And so I want everybody to hear that CVI works
Yes.
and it saves lives, and you get those right people in there, and you help people develop the skills to not only be successful and thrive, but then to help their brothers, help their
Hmm.
sisters, help their cousins, the
Yep.
ones who are in the lanes. Couple of closing questions. So we're going to shift over into who is Marcus, the totality of Marcus. I won't even say when you're off the clock, like, because I know when you do this type of work, it
Yeah.
is who you are. It's not like you clock in and clock out.
That's right. That's so true.
But if you weren't doing what you're doing, if there was a completely different career path outside of now being a trainer and a consultant and CVI work, what would it be?
I'm gonna give you two answers to that. The first one is one that I always figured that I was before I got into this, and I still have a high passion for it, and that's just being a businessman. I love entrepreneurship. That's why I started my
Mhm.
own magazine, and my family's always been entrepreneurs. So it would have to be something developing and building up entrepreneurs, or building up companies, because I love entrepreneurship. That would be probably what I would be doing, is constantly building and constructing some things, which I'm still doing now too on the side. I have a app called PenMate where you can write letters and send postcards to people incarcerated straight from your phone. It's doing real well. We've had it in the App Store for a few years. My partner and I, we created it because obviously being locked up and knowing what it's like to get a letter. So we have that going. So I would be probably innovative in that space even more. The second one is one that I feel that I do now, and this work is kind of like my ministry. But it would,
Mm.
if it wasn't CVI, it would be ministry. I mean, I would be telling about the gospel, preaching, motivational interviewing. I've always been one that want to speak and talk and bless people if I could. And so though I probably would be doing something like that, especially now that I'm, we're operating in the field of evangelism, so to speak, because that's what I do. I go out, I travel, I
Mhm.
do this work. It becomes, the trainings are my congregation, and then the material that I train on is my message, which is wrapped around peace, which is wrapped around God anyway. So, God had to show me that I'm never at my church as much as I should be because I'm always traveling, but my church understands because I'm not the lead pastor, I'm associate pastor, but they understand that this is ministry for me. This is ministry. I can't tell you how many times I've helped somebody, they bless me, I put them to the side. I mean, I'm always in other people's city and helping people. So that is what I would probably still be doing, just in a different vein.
I absolutely love that because I also consider the work that I do as my ministry. I'm not the most religious person. However, I feel as though I'm doing what I'm supposed to do,
Sure.
right? And you could take that as in, my purpose in life. Yes, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm also doing what I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm
Hmm.
supposed to be out here helping people and hopefully being a servant leader, and
That's right.
reflecting that. So I really I love that you said that,
Mhm.
brother. I'm using that word very intentionally now, brother, because I feel as if we are kindred spirits in our shared experiences,
Yes.
separate spaces, but very, very much similar pathways, very similar philosophies and values about the work. I hope that you don't mind. I'm from here on out. That's my brother Marcus.
Ain't
Like
no doubt
and
about it.
I'm going to
Hey,
speak on it
you've
like
been my
that. Like
brother, even when so I'm glad we like kindred
yeah,
mind because you've been my brother, man. And once I meet you, we became brothers, and it starts
yeah,
there, and everything else, all the business colleague stuff. But you're my brother first, and I appreciate
yes,
everything that you're doing, brother. And I mean, there's so much more. We definitely. So I'm open for a round two because there's so much more that time flies fast. Obviously, we see, and I know we got things to do,
yeah.
but I definitely want to find a second time to get in with you because it's so much we could get into. Even about, I'll leave you with this. We'll say this when we talk. Next time we talk, I want to talk to you about something that I talk to when I teach at the college. Is that although there's models out there, and I was part of one of them that was real big, and I helped establish them. I'm not a big believer in models no more. Models don't do nothing
Hmm.
for me. I can teach you about them, but I could care less about a model. What I like is good training and teaching and help with implementation, and we can have gumbo. I can have a piece of this so-called model or a piece of this. I'm saying so-called for a reason.
Right,
It's a piece of
right.
this and a piece of that. So, and the country's shifting that way. I know this because I'm out there. As they say outside, I'm outside. I'm at all these locations,
Mhm.
meeting people, and I could do a lot. I could tell the DOJ a thing or two about like what I'm hearing on the ground because I'm always visiting these cities. And the thing is, the days of where you got to do it this way and that way, people want to get it right for their city, what makes sense. Obviously, use some evidence informed, not evidence based, evidence formed practices that come from some of these models, and you get it done right. But you got to have some good training in TTA. And that's what I do. That's what Dr. Chico does. That's what Norm does. That's what a lot of individuals that I know in this space are doing. Shout out to Norm, too, who sat on my hiring panel years ago as well. So, Norm, I've been in this a long time. Norm's been in it longer than me. And so, I always give props where props is due. Same thing with T.O. and others that helped me along the way to do this work. But I appreciate you, Jonathan.
Look, so man, you are so ahead of the curve. You have no idea, because as I was closing, what I have, I call the show "The Incredible Messenger" for a
Yeah.
reason,
Hmm.
right? The language that encapsulates is, for the field, you have to have those incredible messengers. What you call are those credible messengers? I think that we have to give some reverence, if that's the right word,
Yes.
to what who these people are.
Yeah.
Obviously, Norman was my very first guest on the show.
Oh,
Yeah, he was my inaugural guest, and then Anthony Smith. And so with that, I'm saying I see you, not just me. Like I said, I saw you in the lobby, and people were swarming you because you, Dr. Chico, and others epitomize what it means to be a credible messenger, not just in the street outreach,
that's
but
right. Wherever.
to the decision makers and
Yes.
policymakers
Come on
and
now.
other
That's
people,
right.
because you walk it, you walk the talk, you bring those insights in. Like you said, you can bring insight to the academics and people who think they know what it is because their job titles and not because of whatever. So,
Yeah.
with all that said, as a credible messenger, I want to give you an opportunity, and if you've already done it, feel free to say it's good. But I want to give you the opportunity to leave our audience with whatever your message is that you want them to take home.
Well, I guess I would say don't ever try to judge a book by its cover, and because you never know. And if you live in life, I got this from some of my colleagues and stuff. What does your dash represent? From when
Mm,
you were born to when you die. And that's on my mind. I heard somebody talk about that, and so I was like, what is my dash? My dash has been about helping people. It's been about being authentic in my approach, being authentically 100% me, and just loving on people, man. That's something that my man Dr. Chico likes to say a lot. Love on people, they love on you back. And I would just like people to take from this and know that there truly are a lot of roses that's coming out the concrete. You just got to just get out
Yeah.
there and see it. There's a lot of them, man. And I'm honored to meet so many of them, man. I am so humble with the ability to do what I do, to meet so many people. You name a city, I'm going to be able to tell you who's on that ground that I know that's doing this work. And there are roses that are coming out the concrete. And I think we just got to cultivate them roses, make sure you water them, make sure you put them where they need to be, because they might have came out the concrete, but now they need to be placed in a nice vase. They need to be, in
Mm-hmm.
some lines, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of roses coming out the concrete, and we just got to pay attention to them and believe in them and believe in them. My people didn't believe. They said I was going back to jail when I came home. Words are powerful, so you got to speak life. You got to speak good things into people, and you cannot judge people by your first, just what you think on the outside, because it's more to a person than that.
Ashe, brother. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Man, this has been a wonderful episode. Look, we went past an overtime, but I think we're right on time as
Yes.
all things should be. I want to thank you. If you've made it to the end of the show, that means that we brought the value that I aim to provide to you and bring to you. I'm so thankful for all my listeners. And what I need to get better at doing this. If you find value in this show, I need you to make sure that you are giving us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, share with your friends, share with your network, share with your colleagues. Look, I'm working hard to make sure that I'm bringing you what we all need to live in a safe, healthy, happy, hopeful world. And getting the word out about guests like Marcus and the others that are on the show is really important. It's not about vanity metrics for me. It's about sharing the message and spreading the word. So if you got to this point, please do that for me. I appreciate you. We'll be back next week with another episode, another incredible messenger. In the meantime, stay safe, stay blessed, stay encouraged. I'm out. Peace.